Welcome to TriTech University. My name is Bill Steppen, and today we're going to start exploring the Active E connectivity for your e-commerce solutions. As you probably are aware, we have a partnership with a company called Vortx, V-O-R-T-X, that does the majority of our online cart hosting, but you have some other options available now as well with version 12 and our partnership with Modern Retail. You can also just choose to connect directly via API functions, but for the focus of today's webinar and live stream broadcast, we're just going to take a look at the basic functions regardless of which hosting solution you decide to go with. As always with these sessions, over to the right, you have your option to log in into the chat option. So go ahead and click on that chat tab. Down at the bottom, click the nickname option and go ahead and put in your name and let me know that you're here by saying hi. If you prefer, you can also choose to log in via Facebook or Twitter, but probably the most straightforward one is the nickname option. Let's go ahead. We got a lot to talk about today, so we're just going to go ahead and switch right over into my TriTech University system as always. We're actually going to take a look at a couple of different systems today, but I just want to make sure that the whole idea of this process makes sense to everyone. So let me know if there are any questions in that chat window area. But when you are first getting started with Active e-commerce, when you've signed up for that service, and when you've started to get some information about connecting your system to those solutions, you will be going into the Maintenance and Active E menu down to the option here right next to my hand called Active E Setup. This Active E Setup area is where you do everything relating to Active E solutions, but you'll be clicking up here at the top where it says E-commerce and API. You'll want to make sure that this is enabled, and then you'll go over here to the second tab, the Update Shopping Cart tab. Now, this particular system I'm keeping clean. I'm not going to show any particulars. I just want to kind of cover the generics, the 30,000 foot overview, if you will. On this first tab, if you are going to be connecting to a Vortx solution, you will be receiving a URL along with a login and password. You'll basically plug in all those details here. And then down below, you'll choose the appropriate shopping cart version. There's really just the one version at this time. If you are not using a Vortx connection, you'll just be going pretty much straight over to this API option for your API connectivity to your third-party site. On the second tab, the General 2 tab, this is where you will choose which pricing point you want to use as your primary price point for listing your sales prices on the website. In most cases, you'd be choosing something like our price. There's also what's called an Active E sale price that is the default for what's called the shopping cart sale price. Now, your mileage may vary with third-party sites, but at least with the Vortx solution, if you have anything in the Active E sale price field, it's a common price field on all SKUs in AIM. If there is something in that price field, then what happens on the Vortx card is it uses whatever is your normal price, and it usually puts a slash through that. Then it will say something like on sale for, or our normal price, or our sale price. You can choose whatever verbiage you want, and then it would display whatever's in that Active E sale price. A common strategy that some stores might do is they might actually choose to make the cart price be the retail price and make this be the our price, so it essentially looks like everything is on sale. But it's up to you, whatever strategy you want to do with that. If you are going to be using a Vortx solution, you're going to want to choose what's known as XML packages. XML packages in plain English is just how things are going to look on the website. When you right-click on these fields, you'll choose, you'll see some options, again, in hopefully plain English, things like variance in right bar, variance in grid. XML packages, like I said, they're just basically how things are going to look. So in this case, when a customer ultimately navigates to a product, what are the details going to look like on the page? Are the details going to be just in a right-hand bar on the side of the screen? Are they going to be in a grid? Are they going to be in like a drop-down list? So you got some choices there. Most cases you'll usually use like a right bar, and kind of the same idea with manufacturers. When your customers browse by brand and manufacturer names, do you want those products to appear in a grid? Do you want that grid to contain the price point right there on the grid? Do you want it to be in a list top to bottom? Do you want to take advantage of guided navigation? That's something that we'll cover in a later live stream or recording, but there's a lot of options here. If you're not sure which one to pick, I typically recommend the variants in right bar and the grid. And again, this is exclusive to Vortx. If you're using a third-party cart, then these really options don't come into play. What does come into play is the shopping cart price, and over here on the third tab, the API tab, the location that you want to use for that pricing. So you want to make sure that you pick that. Let's talk back about the General 3 tab. If you do have more than one store location and you want to take advantage of some tracking of those individual quantities, you can specify which quantities you want to use for tracking quantities. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then if you do want to separate out specific locations for a quantity by location, in other words, if you want the customer to see that you have X amount at location 1, Y amount at location 2, and so forth, you can key those location codes in here. So hopefully this is making sense. I don't want to get too far down into the weeds. And again, I'm trying to keep the general overview here. If you're not concerned about any of these things, you can ignore them for now. The most basic things you want to make sure of are, again, the basic login info over here if you're using Vortx, pricing info if you're here, and then you also want to make sure you specify some templates for how your descriptions will appear. We do have two default buttons here that you'll typically click. This will by default pull in the manufacturer name, the model name, and then the description of the product as your essentially title or header of the item. And then in an extended description area, it will pull in what's known as an extended description, an active E description, as well as a model and a manufacturer, kind of in a table type format. If you are a music store or otherwise are taking advantage of tracking media inventory, that is typically things like books and sheet musics and CDs and things like that. We do have equivalent options over here in this area. This would typically pull in things like voicing and arrangers and tables of contents and things like that. And then the extended pricing is something that, again, I'm not going to get too far down into right now, but this would be a way that you could specify if certain customer types should actually see different prices when they're logged in. So say, for example, if you have VIP customers or if you offer wholesale prices to business owners or other commercial type customers, you could specify an alternative price point for their types of what are called customer codes or customer types. Again, we're not going to get into that right now, but I just wanted to mention that there is that functionality available to you with our ActiveE solution. So at a minimum, basic information here, pricing information here, as well as over on the API tab, what location you're going to use for the pricing, and then description info here, as well as potentially here. On the Download Orders tab, this is again just kind of at a bare minimum. You will want to make sure that for the shipping category, you specify where you want your shipping charges to be recorded when you pull those sales into AIM. Most of you should have a shipping category named thusly. Some of our older customers may have a freight or handling category that you may opt to use as well. But ultimately, this is referencing your non-inventory categories. So wherever you want to go in and tweak that, you can do so in the ledger area here for non-inventory categories. But that's all that you really need to get started. If there are any questions, definitely let me know over in the chat. I'm actually going to now switch to a different database. This is one that we kind of use for our in-house testing for a music store. And we're now going to discuss really the meat and potatoes of an online store setup. So once you've got your system connected to an e-commerce cart, the core of your foundation of your e-commerce is going to be in the form of what are called web categories. Now, your web categories, if you've ever done any kind of online shopping, they are what your customers will see when they are browsing your website. They can be essentially the same as your internal inventory categories, but they don't have to be. For example, for those of you who are music stores, you might be recalling that some of our normal default inventory categories are things like fretted instruments and band and orchestra and things like that, with subcategories below those. But I don't know about you, but the last time I shopped for a guitar online, I didn't search for fretted instruments. I searched for guitar. So what you may want to do is you may want to create your web categories thusly. Instead of it being fretted instruments with acoustic and electric and stuff like that below that, you may want to create a web category called guitars and then have electric and acoustic below that. Ultimately, though, it's up to you. Whatever you feel is going to connect the most with your customers. There is some strategy in mind here, as well as search engine functions when your customers are searching just the web in general for what they want to buy. The more appropriate terminology you have here, the more likely your page will come up on those search engine results. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. But when it comes to creating your web categories, we don't need a whole lot of detail. All we really need is a description and another XML package. And again, XML package, if you right-click, you'll see those options for grid, grid with prices, etc. In this case, when your customers are browsing that web category, what are they going to see? Are they going to see products in that grid? Are they going to see them in a listing top to bottom? So just kind of keep that in mind. You'll also notice there's this option here called Parent Category. This is a self-referencing dropdown. And what I mean by that is you can use any web category that you've created as a parent category to another category. When it comes to web categories, you don't have to follow the same category, subcategory structure as your inventory categories do. You could leave a category and have no categories below it, no subcategories, or in this case, child categories, if you will, and you could plop whatever products are appropriate into that web category and you'd be good. You can also have categories below categories below categories. So for example, I might say that I have a category called band, and then I might have another category where that band category is the parent to clarinet, and then I might have other categories below that, the child to the clarinet, which is the child to band, denoting the different key signatures. So just kind of think about that as well. When you are creating your web categories, you don't have to worry about these other details for full descriptions or search engine titles or descriptions or things like that. Anytime you see the term SE or the initials for SE, that is short for search engine. If you do have someone on staff or you yourself are familiar with a lot of search engine optimization strategies, we have these options available for you to go in and tweak so that you can take advantage of those, again, on the idea of getting your result higher on Google and Bing and Yahoo and so forth. But that's all that you really need, just a description and an XML package. So you can see, for example, this Piccolo category has a parent category of band, meaning that it is within my band category. Now, another thought with web categories is they don't have to all be specific to inventory. You can have a clearance web category. And here's the trick. A product can exist in more than one web category simultaneously. So if you've got a piccolo, but maybe that piccolo isn't moving, you could put it both in the piccolo category, but you could also put it in the clearance web category. And that way it'll show up in both areas of the website and give it that much more exposure. So just kind of keep that in mind too when it comes to your web categories. Ultimately, they're whatever you want them to be, but there can be some strategy to it. You might notice there's also this idea called unpublish. So when it comes to unpublishing a category, if you want to hide it, but you don't necessarily want to delete it, you can unpublish a web category at any time. That means it will no longer show up on your website, and any products that are within that web category will be hidden as well. You can unpublish both at the web category level as well as the individual product level, and we'll be taking a look at that here in just a moment. That can be definitely useful if you have a category maybe called like, for example, clearance. Maybe there's nothing on clearance right now, so you want to hide that web category. Maybe you have a web category called seasonal, or just something that you only use certain times of the year, and you want to hide it when it's not in use. You can unpublish it. So just, again, keep that in mind. The way that the web categories work is by assigning a product to one or more web categories. That tells AIM this is going to actually go to your e-commerce platform. Now, if you're not using Vortx, if you're using a third-party cart such as Shopify or Magento or anything like that, and especially if you are connecting to those carts using our partnership with Modern Retail, you don't have to be too specific about the web categories here. All you have to have is any web category, maybe just call it e-commerce, and by assigning it to that e-commerce web category, you'll then be able to use Modern Retail's tools or Shopify's direct tools to disperse it from there on their end. So just, again, kind of keep that in mind. A lot of this stuff is specific to Vortx, but it doesn't have to be. The main key here is if it has a web category, that's how it goes up to the cart, whatever cart that might be. Speaking of that, when it comes to dispersing items to web categories, there's two ways to do it, individually and in bulk. And I want to show you both of those options here. We're going to go straight to a given product. I'm just going to go into my change inventory utility and pull up not RT14, but maybe something else this time. Let's we'll mix it up a little bit. We'll talk about a music stand. So on this music stand, or any product, on the main tab of your change inventory utility is an Active E button. This will bring up what's known as an Active E maintenance window. And any details relating to this product's life online are going to be found here. The most important thing is over here to, all the way over to the right, I've got to get my pointing correct, your web categories. Whatever web categories you've created will show up over here. You might notice that they are nested appropriately. And whichever ones you check mark are going to be where that product will reside online. So you can notice here I've got this in the band and orchestra accessories. I've got a check marked there. I also have it check marked in the stands web category. And I'm going to talk about a strategy here in just a moment with that. But before I do that, I also want to point out a few other things here. You'll notice there's a web description text box down here. So this is essentially an extended description. It gives you all the room in the world to talk about how great this product is and why the customer should buy it and maybe why they should buy it from you versus someone else. This text box is multi-functioning. In other words, if you notice, you can click on this drop down and there are some other options here, such as template overrides, summaries, manufacturer image URLs. Ultimately, whatever you switch to is its own unique text box. We're just reusing that same area on the screen so that we don't have to have 8 or 9 different text boxes all over the place. You'll notice if I switch this back to web description, everything is still there. So giving it a web category is the most important thing. Optionally, giving it an extended description is super helpful, as well as then assigning it an image. You can either click the image button to bring up an image table, if you will, to assign it one or more images, or if you don't have any local images, you can get the images from a manufacturer's website, essentially going out and copying the address and then pasting that into here. You can do multiple images by simply hitting enter after each one and putting each image URL on its own line item within that text box. Ultimately, you'll click this upload item to shopping cart button to push it up to the cart. And then once it's on the cart, it will look something like this. So let me go ahead and pull up my sample page here. So this is our testing website here. I'm going to click up here where it says Shop All. I know that's kind of hard to see. Basically, all the web categories from your system will show up typically in a Shop All type dropdown. You can certainly work with your developers to pick whatever you want it to look like. Again, this is kind of specific to a Vortx page. If you got a Shopify or a WooCommerce or any other type of page, you'll just be working with them to set up your web categories however you want. Let's go to the band and orchestra category. So when we go to that category, let me actually try clicking on that again. So there we go. Now I see the wheels a churning there. What will happen is this will display not only whatever web categories are within that category, but also any products that you've assigned to that web category. And of course, my system's running a little slow since I'm obviously broadcasting right now, but here we can see the categories that are kind of sub to that, as well as the products that are within that web category. You might recall the music stand was assigned to both the band and orchestra accessories category as well as the stands category. That means it will show up not only when I go to band and orchestra, but also when I go to stands. So there it is. It doesn't really matter which one I click on, they're both going to the same product. So a strategy that you might want to incorporate if you're using a Vortx site is to only put it at the most depth web category, if you will. In other words, maybe only put it to the stands and not put it to band and orchestra accessories. In my example, if you don't want that first page to be completely full of every product, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Some stores opt to only put the items that they want to feature, so to speak, at all those different tiers of categories, so that way you can kind of see the most popular ones as you start at the highest levels of category, and then as you drill further down, you see more and more and ultimately all of those products. But you can see here it's bringing in the description, the manufacturer, the model number. Here's the extended description as well as the pricing related to that product. And then the image itself was uploaded, and if I click on that, you can see it brings up a zoomed in image. So basically everything regarding this item comes from within AIM. Ultimately, when customers add this to the cart and then check out, those orders will be able to be pulled back into AIM. Now, I'm not using anything where I can go in right now because it will actually ask me for like a credit card number. So I'm not going to actually go through the process of making a sale, but just so you can kind of see what it might look like, you can click the add to cart button and check it out. Of course, all of these little details about how it looks are completely customizable. So don't, take this for exactly how it needs to look. For obviously things like this logo up here can be your store logo. You can have whatever color schemes you want. This is set up as kind of like a one-page checkout, so it'll ask for the customer's email and shipping and billing address information. They have the option to save an account if they are creating it for the first time. They could also log in if they are already an account member. You can set up whatever shipping methods you want to offer your customers, whatever payment methods you want to offer, and then ultimately that will then get placed and then brought back into your AIM system. So then back in AIM, of course, I don't want to update. Please go away. Okay, so let's go ahead and pretend like we were pulling in an order. So you push the products up. Actually, before I get to that point, I do want to talk about how you can push products up in mass. So that was an individual product. So you go right to the Change Inventory utility, click that Active E button, make whatever adjustments you want, and push it up to the cart. But I'm sure you don't want to do that for every single product. So we do have a utility in Maintenance and Active E called the Inventory utility. Again, that was kind of hard to see. It's Maintenance, Active E, and Inventory. This is kind of like a combination of your Display Inventory search utility. You can browse by type of inventory, various other types of criteria such as categories and subcategories, vendors that you buy these products from, manufacturers that they're sourced from. There's all kinds of options here, such as Are you tracking quantities? I kind of glossed over that stuff. Does it already have an active E or web category? You can see all of these are kind of set to both by default, but maybe you only want to pull up products that already have a category or don't have a category. It's just kind of things like that. Ultimately, when you go through this process, let's just pull up some products here and then I'll get the inventory. So this will take you to a second tab based on whatever selections you've done, and it will display out all of those products. I'm not going to have a whole bunch of a lot. This is obviously a demo system, but what you can then do is you can highlight your first item, and let's say we want all of these items to go to my band and orchestra lubricants web category. I can take the first one and I can go ahead and make that association. So there you can see I've given it this lubricants category. I'm going to go ahead and save that. You'll notice that this appears now on the web category table, but it's not on any of the others. What I can do is I can go back to that first one, select it by check marking it, and then right click. And when you right click, you've got all kinds of application options. Essentially what you can do is you can apply settings from your first item to all the rest. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and say add the selected active ECAT, which is the web category, to all the checked items. You'll notice these are all check marked. When I do that, it unselects that from the first one, but you'll notice now all the other ones have that lubricants category. So basically it goes ahead and adds all of the web categories that you've selected to every product without you having to do it individually. This can be a huge time saver, and any function regarding your settings here can be done in that multiplicity fashion. For example, if I go back to valve oil, and let's say we want to make sure we track the quantity of not only this but all other products. So by check marking this, it only sends the quantity that you have on hand up to your cart of choice. By check marking that and saving that, you'll notice now if I go to, let's say, the 2-ounce Mighty Mist here and take a look at it, it is not check marked as track quantity. But if I go back to the first one, right click and say I want to apply the selected track quantity of my line item to all the checked items, now when I go and take a look at it, you'll notice it is check marked as track quantity. And the flip side is also true. Maybe I want to undo a selection. I can uncheck it, go ahead and hit save. You'll notice that if I go back to the valve oil and check it, it's still marked as track quantity. But if I go back to the Mighty Mist, right click and say apply the selected track quantity, which in this case it is unchecked. I'm going to apply that, and now you'll notice if I go back and look at the valve oil, it is unchecked. So it works both ways as far as checking or unchecking these various functions. So anything that can be applied across the board, you've got a right-click option for. You'll probably still be coming in and doing individual images since those are pretty specific to any given product. But this can save a huge amount of time when it comes to applying all of these settings across the board. So with the couple of minutes left that I have here, I do want to just briefly discuss how these orders get pulled in. I'm not going to do one start to finish because, like I said, I don't want to key in credit card info or anything like that into the test site. But when you're ready to pull orders in, or anytime you're wanting to pull orders in, you'll go to the Active E-Modules menu where you've got the option to import those e-commerce orders. And when you do that, this will pull up essentially your master area for all things e-commerce. Any orders that have already been pulled in and are waiting to be processed will be displayed on this table. And as you highlight items, their address and information will appear over here, billing and shipping information. Down along the bottom, let me just kind of pull this, not up to maximize, but let me just kind of pull this off to the side so my face isn't in the way. You will see Cart and eBay and Amazon and Buy.com and basically any channels that we are affiliated with down along the bottom. And by clicking those buttons, that will pull in any orders that have been placed on the cart but not yet pulled in. It will go ahead and pull those in, at which point they will be displayed here. When they're displayed, it will show the web order number from your cart along with the AIM account number, the name, and the date that the order was placed. In most cases, all of those account numbers are going to be 0 because they haven't been assigned an AIM customer yet. But you'll notice that all of these buttons over here are grayed out. So typically what you would do is you would lock an order. It will then say it's locked by and whatever your login name is. That prevents anyone who's working at other computer workstations from processing the same order at the same time as you. So it prevents doubling up of an order. Once it's locked, you'll then be able to match the customer, or if no matches are found, you can create the customer. Either way, it will assign a customer account number, either an existing account where they may have already been a brick and mortar customer of yours, or it will create one for them. Then if you're using our connectivity to OpenEdge, especially if you're a Vortx customer, OpenEdge or TSYS, basically any global or WorldPay connectivity, you can pull in the credit card tokens, so you've got that on file. Ultimately then, you're going to either invoice the order, which will pull it right into a sales invoice with their line items and their calculated shipping totals, or if you would prefer, you can put it through a special order process, especially in this day and age where maybe you don't have it to actually invoice right away, but you do want to put it through a special order to actually put onto a purchase order and ultimately to get into your system. So either way, once you've processed it as an invoice or an order, then it will be removed from this listing. If you aren't going to be using a connected credit card partner, if you're going to be doing credit cards alternatively, such as through authorize.net or your own personal credit card bank or whatever it might be, the payment information that was processed online will show here as far as the payment type and the transaction state. And this might say, for example, paid by Visa and it was authorized. So when you pull that into an invoice, you just want to make sure to use your option for previously authorized as Visa or whatever it might have been. So then ultimately you then just pack it up and ship it out. And that is essentially the process for e-commerce. I know, like I said, this is like the 30,000 foot overview. There are a lot of other details that kind of go into this process, but all it really boils down to is the web categories, assigning products to those web categories, pushing them out to the cart, and then pulling in and processing those orders. So we obviously offer personalized training on all of these utilities for when you do sign up for these services, so make sure you take advantage of that. All of this stuff is documented as well on our online help. So by going to help and AIM help, there is a chapter there all about our Active integration services, and there are sub-chapters in there for third-party e-commerce as well as Vortx e-commerce. Definitely check those out. Next Tuesday, we'll be wrapping up our September live stream broadcasts. Welcome to fall, right? We're going to be taking a look at how to do some automatic discounting, either by volume discounts, where a customer purchases bulk of a certain item and you want to offer them a discount. We'll also be looking at mix and match discounts, such as build your own six-pack or buy multiples of multiple products and then they get discounts on all of those. We'll also take a look at sale parameters. In other words, maybe like a holiday sale like Black Friday or other types of holiday sales. So taking a look at all of that. I'm still in the process of finalizing my broadcasts, my schedule for the month of October. There are some personal things that are kind of getting in the way of me hammering that out 100%, but definitely keep checking out the live stream page on our video portal to see what are the upcoming schedules will be. And if you have any suggestions for live stream topics, make sure you click that poll button up at the top where you can then submit your ideas for topics, because I want to make sure that I'm covering content that you'll find relatable and helpful. Again, if there's any questions at all, give our support team a call. If you have questions on the program, if you have questions about your account, give our sales team a call. And either way, we're here to help you make the most of your software investment. We want to see you succeed, because when you do, we do. We'll see you later, and I hope you can all make it a great day. Take care.